Imagine believing everything is over, only to realize the person you tried to silence is still breathing. That was the terrifying moment one husband faced on a night that would change everything. What he thought was the end of the story suddenly became the beginning of a nightmare he couldn't control. For a moment, the room was completely silent. No movement, no sound. He believed it was finished. But then, something happened. A faint movement, a shallow breath. And in that chilling instant, he realized something horrifying. The woman he thought was gone was still alive, because the person he believed he had silenced forever wasn't dead. Friends and neighbors saw two people who seemed happy together, building a life side by side. They shared a home, routines, and the kind of everyday moments that made their relationship appear strong and stable. To everyone around them, their marriage looked completely normal. But behind closed doors, things were very different. The tension between them had been growing for months. Small disagreements slowly turned into serious arguments. Conversations became colder, and the distance between them kept getting wider. What once felt like love was slowly being replaced by frustration, resentment, and anger. The marriage that once looked so strong from the outside was quietly beginning to fall apart. And during all of this, something darker was beginning to grow inside the husband, something no one else could see. As the pressure inside the marriage grew, the husband's mindset began to change. What once felt like ordinary frustrations slowly turned into something much more dangerous. There were problems piling up in their lives. Financial stress weighed heavily on him. At the same time, jealousy and control issues began creeping into the relationship. Suspicion started replacing trust, and every disagreement seemed to make things worse. Rumors of betrayal and possible affairs only fueled his anger. Whether real or imagined, these thoughts consumed him. Instead of trying to repair the relationship, he began to see his wife as the source of all his problems. Over time, resentment replaced whatever love had once been there. And then came the turning point. One argument would change everything. What started as another heated fight quickly spiraled out of control. In that moment, the husband began thinking about a way to escape the marriage forever. Not through separation, not through divorce, but through something far darker. That night started like so many others before it. Another argument. What began as a tense conversation quickly turned into a heated fight. Voices were raised, accusations were thrown back and forth, and the anger that had been building for months finally exploded. Neither of them was willing to back down. The situation escalated quickly. In a moment of rage and desperation, the unthinkable happened. The husband attacked his wife, turning what should have been just another argument into something far more terrifying. The room fell silent. After the assault, she stopped moving. Her body lay still on the floor, showing no signs of movement. To him, she looked completely lifeless. For a moment, he simply stood there, staring. He believed it was over. He thought she was dead. Believing everything was over, the husband began thinking about what to do next. His mind raced as he tried to figure out how to hide what had just happened. The room was quiet. Too quiet. As he stood there preparing to cover up the terrible act, something caught his attention. A slight movement. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but then he saw it again. Her chest moved, slowly rising and falling, breathing. His wife was still alive. The person he believed was gone was now fighting to survive. In that moment, panic rushed through him. Everything he thought was finished suddenly spiraled out of control. The plan he thought was complete was now unraveling before his eyes. Eventually, the truth began to surface. What had happened inside that home could not stay hidden forever. At some point, someone discovered the victim. Whether it was a neighbor, a passerby, or someone close to the family, the shocking scene quickly triggered a call for help. Within minutes, emergency responders rushed to the location. Paramedics moved quickly, working to stabilize the woman who was still fighting to survive. At the same time, police officers began securing the scene, realizing almost immediately that something about the situation didn't add up. The story being told didn't match what investigators were seeing. As authorities carefully examined the evidence, one thing became increasingly clear. This was no accident. The injuries, the circumstances, and the inconsistencies in the husband's explanation all pointed towards something far more disturbing. Investigators soon focused their attention on one person, the husband. And as the investigation continued, he quickly became the main suspect. As detectives dug deeper, they began carefully piecing the story together. The scene itself held important clues. Evidence inside the home told investigators that what had happened was far more violent than the husband initially claimed. Certain details simply didn't match the version of events he tried to describe. At the same time, police began learning more about the couple's relationship. Friends and acquaintances spoke about the growing tension between them, the arguments, the stress, and the cracks that had been forming in the marriage for months. Then there were the inconsistencies. Each time the husband spoke to investigators, small details in his story seemed to change. What he said didn't fully align with the physical evidence or with what others knew about their relationship. Little by little, the puzzle started coming together. And detectives realized something chilling. He believed he had gotten away with it, but the one thing he never expected was the very thing that would expose the truth. The victim survived, and that changed everything. Once investigators gathered enough evidence, the case moved quickly. Police made the arrest, taking the husband into custody as the main suspect in the attack. What had once seemed like a story he might escape from was now turning into a full criminal case. Soon after, the case moved to court. During the trial, prosecutors laid out the evidence piece by piece. They described the violent night, the troubled marriage, and the inconsistencies in the husband's story. Witness testimony, forensic evidence, and the victim's survival all played a critical role in revealing what had really happened. The courtroom listened as the truth unfolded. What the husband once believed he had hidden was now being exposed in front of everyone. And in the end, justice began to take shape. The husband was held accountable for his actions, facing the legal consequences for what he had done. Meanwhile, the victim, who had fought to stay alive during that terrifying night, became the strongest piece of evidence in the entire case. Her survival turned the entire story around, and because she lived, the truth could no longer be buried. In the end, the husband believed that night would erase everything. He thought the truth would disappear in the silence of that room. But fate had other plans, because the woman he tried to silence refused to give up. She kept fighting, holding on to the smallest thread of life. And in the end, that one small sign of life changed everything. He thought the story was over that night, but the woman he tried to silence kept breathing, and that single breath exposed everything.